big new moon solar eclipse in Aries with Chiron conjunct the eclipse. Intense energies with the Mercury retrograde in Aries as well. So, thought we'd jump on here spontaneously and improvise just the energy of the now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Ask the now.
Yeah. It's been intense. A lot of stuff coming up. Oh, wow.
Redefining mental illness. What is mental illness, Jim?
Mental illness is, for me, is unintegrated trauma response. Unprocessed trauma. Neural pathways in the brain that have penetrated into the amygdala, the reptilian brain of fight, flight, or freeze. It's the very survival instinct. So Chiron in astrology is the wounded healer, and Aries is all about our identities, who we are. I am is the key phrase. The archetypes of Aries are courage, initiative, being authentic, being brave. And with Chiron in this eclipse, it's being brave with our vulnerabilities for the purpose of healing and providing actionable tools for our toolkit on how to navigate our way out of difficult circumstances as they arise. So for me, I have, in my human design, I have a wound of self-rejection. And interestingly, the ruling planet of Aries is Mars. And in my chart right now, Mars is transiting Pisces, which is my 12th house. And the 12th house is the house of self-undoing, self-sabotage. And Joelle and I were talking earlier this morning about all the times in my past when wonderful opportunities were presented to me for growth, for abundance, for adventure. And I basically took myself out of the running because of this self-sabotaging wound, this self-rejection. And you can trace it all the way back upstream to deep, deep feelings of survivor's guilt, being unworthy. So issues of worthiness come up in this eclipse for me. Inadequacy, having made a mistake, in my case, I've survived a lot of really intense traumas. And so the work of Gabor Mate right now is so pertinent and relevant to our times because everyone has trauma. Birth is trauma. Birth is traumatic. Being born into this world is a traumatic event, both for the mother and the child.
Yeah, and trauma and crisis are like kind of cousins or sisters and brothers, because there's one thing though that we think about when we're like into evolution and when we look at Pluto or generations. It's like one thing generates another. And so from crisis, you get into a transformation, you get into a new state of things. And after that comes stability. But you cannot have stability without, you cannot have evolution and the subsequent stability from that evolution, from that new perspective, that new state of being, that new thing, without somewhat of a crisis. Something is bubbling, something is being cooked, right? We're like in some kind of like cookware.
Transmutation. The other word we use is alchemy.
Something is happening this way, and then you get some kind of transformation, some kind of evolution. And there are many types of crisis. There's financial crisis, there's health crisis, there's relationship crisis, there's identity crisis.
Good one with Aries.
There's all kinds of relationships. So it can be a family crisis. There's, of course, war is a crisis in itself. And Aries, when off-centered, is warmonger, is war promoter and oppressor. And so I have it in the South Node. So I talk about it with not just authority, I just talk about it from a visceral point where I have a relationship with my anger. I cultivate it so that I can recognize it and not necessarily be ruled by it, which that was probably another state from before where I was ruled by it. And it would provoke different states of being. I would be in crisis from being in there and being too far in it that there's no evolution from it. So it is just a thing that too shall pass. Being in the center of the hurricane, we can be in it and not be of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And with this value of added value of astrology, we have a little more perspective. Like, can you see Jim's mat, the hawk? Or the higher perspective that astrology reading gives is for you to see it, not be in it. So I was talking about the different kinds of crisis and how from the feeling of a crisis can start coming over you when there is no crisis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's going back to the trauma.
We get triggered, right? Everything goes into the unconscious mind. This is relevant for me, so I'm going to keep bringing up my 12th house. I have Chiron natally in the 12th house in Pisces, and it's directly opposite Uranus-Pluto conjunction in Virgo. So when I get triggered into my core wound, which is abandonment, rejection, it triggers the opposite sign, Virgo, which is the health and healing aspect, but it's this Uranus-Pluto conjunction in my chart. Uranus is like rebel, just reject and rebel. Uranus is the revolutionary energy, and Pluto is the energy of transformation, transmutation, alchemy, metamorphosis. So the trigger comes up, and all of us have unprocessed, unintegrated, emotional charge, cellular memory in the physical body itself, right? And something in the present moment, something someone says, something we see, some situation that develops in our reality, and suddenly the trigger happens and this flood of past memory comes flying out of the unconscious mind. And like she just said, it's not happening in real time, but we think it's happening because it's happening from within us. And of course, this speaks to the imperative value of some form of meditation practice. some form of the ability to cultivate that space between the observer, which is us, and what the mind is generating, right? We observe ourselves thinking. We are the living force, with a particle of living force. We're the spark of consciousness that is watching how the mind thinks. But when we don't have any tools like that, we identify with our thoughts, and we actually think we are our thoughts, and the thoughts release cortisol and adrenaline in the blood, and then that generates a panic response emotionally, and then the panicky emotions make more racing thoughts, and the whole thing spirals out of control, and we can have a meltdown, we can have a panic attack, we can have an anxiety attack, we can be gripped with fear and uncertainty. And this is happening everywhere in the world in different dimensions at different levels for different people. But I don't even know if I'm making any sense, because I'm working on being the observer myself right now, while so much emotional stuff is upwelling from my inner world.
Yeah.
And this eclipse in Aries, it's at 19 degrees Aries. It's squaring my Capricorn sun, which is at 18 degrees Capi. So it's a very tight square. And squares in astrology create tension. Think of two earthquake faults in the crust of the earth that are building, potential energies building up in the fault line until there's a snap, there's a fracture in the crust, and then all that built up tension is released in the form of an earthquake. So squares in astrology, when you have a hard square, what to speak of one being triggered by an eclipse?
Yeah.
What to speak of Chiron being perfectly conjunct this eclipse to the minute?
Yeah.
It's to the degree and to the minute. They're all aligned in the sky together on this April 8th, the solar eclipse in Aries, right? It's squaring my sun. And so I'm under the pressure cooker. The crucible of transformation is happening for me to recognize what it is that's no longer serving me as trauma response.
Yeah.
Illuminate it with the light of consciousness, heal it, purge what no longer serves, and integrate the wisdom that comes out of that. And man, I've been exercising. I've lost 30 pounds in the last 6 months. And remember, when we're in the EFI, or the eclipse field of influence, the effects of these eclipses can be felt. Different astrologers and different schools of astrological thought will give different time frameworks for this EFI, but at least 6 months before and after an eclipse, the archetypal energies start to brew in the unconscious. We can feel that something's off. We can feel like, you know how animals can sense an earthquake before it happens? My grandmother used to she would get that kind of eerie feeling in the air, and she says, ooh, it's earthquake weather.
Yeah, yeah.
There's something coming, but we don't know what it is. But animals can sense it, because animals anyway. So we can feel these rumblings sometimes for months in advance before these things happen. And we start to feel insecure. We start to feel vulnerable. Little things start to bother us, and we don't know what it is. And then suddenly the eclipse gets really close, and the intensity keeps ramping up. And of course, there's all kinds of things. We won't even go into all the things happening in the collective. Yeah, this is just my personal experience.
That makes it a year expected and dreaded event. It's kind of the event of the year that way. And then everything else in our lives also comes to a peak in its exploration, in its definition, because Aries and Mars especially is how you define yourself. When you look at the first house in astrology, which is ruled by Mars, am I right? No?
Well, it's affiliated with it. Yeah, right. It's the natural house of Aries.
The natural house, yeah. Not that way.
In the natural house system, yes.
It's how you present yourself. Like, example, I didn't do my hair today, and I'm doing it kind of like in an Aries way, not in a Capricorn way, which would be a very just quite polished, not over the top, but just polished in a way, to kind of give reverence to this sign, this unapologetic,
Raw, real,
just
authentic.
energy that we can all benefit from to get to the to get to a true definition of that identity. You know, we're given a suit. We're given a suit in this life, and we carry it around. So that suit has a mission in itself. It's to reflect what's going on inside normally. So even though we don't necessarily bring it up, it's just what it's for, so that it reflects your clarity, it reflects your personality, the personality, that thing that wants to perdure, that wants to survive, and that wants to keep on going, for good or for worse, for better or for worse. With a certain kind of practice, we polish what's inside, so that what's outside is a true reflection of what's inside, hair and all. And and
Easy for her to say.
and it's just how it is. So I also have that Pluto in Aquarius in the first house for myself, so it's just like this, like, transformation, and like, oh, what's going on? Well, like, just regular people say, well, you're aging, or like you're changing, or it's all good either way, because there's something from inside that wants to spring forth, and that wants to bring forth with even more authenticity than ever before, and yet in a way that is beneficial to the carrier of that suit, and the ones who get in contact with this personality. So hopefully, I mean, we are in the zone, and hopefully that message is more of a encouragement to keep on going, even though, like, we're in the middle of a crisis, but we know we're in the middle of the crisis. Ultimately, you're not supposed to just stay in it forever, right? It ceases. You don't cease to be. When it ceases, you don't cease to be. But while it's going on, you're even more alive. So it's an opportunity to feel even more alive where we're in the middle of it. It's an opportunity to be even more, not reactive, but respond to the small signals and the big ones too, with authenticity, yet also have a little bit of deliberate, like more deliberation in how you make your decisions. It's like your teacher taught you, right? Never do anything in anger. So, like, the two things, doing an action, an act, and anger, are all related to that sign, Aries. So the possibility of this event actually happening is very likely for all of us.
What,
Yet,
anger?
Anger, and do something in anger.
Yeah, of course. Look at the world right now.
So we don't need to go to the world. We can do it right now, right here. We can see it. When we have a fight, it's very possible that it can go into a decision or an act that is from that anger, from that build, from that platform. We want the platform to be healthy and clear, authentic, yes, but let the emotions flow and not do something from the emotions. We want to act from a place of neutrality, which is the opposite of Aries, Libra. That place of equality, balance, neutrality, most importantly. Not a neutrality like bypassing things.
No.
Neutrality while you're in the middle of the opposites. You're in the middle of something very joyful and something very painful, very sad. You're in the middle of it. You have that clarity thanks to AE, right? You experience that clarity, but that neutrality. This is from that point that you can make your decisions, that you can go into action. Not just wait forever on things, but you must do it from a place of neutrality, because this is your real power, especially, all of us.
As a Capricorn with a kind of a always keeping my finger on the pulse of world events, I just bolted up off my mat a few minutes ago and grabbed my cell phone because I got a download. Some impression came to me. Check the USA chart right now, and where is Chiron in the USA chart? It's at 20 degrees of Aries. So this eclipse is right on the USA Chiron. America is in its Chiron return.
Adding one more layer.
One more layer. So we choose with our free will not to tune into the media. We don't watch the news. In fact, I haven't chosen to watch the news since 1988 when I was in college. I had taken a media class, and I stay up to date on what's happening, but I choose the internet to curate and pick and choose how I tune into what's happening. And this is not a criticism of the news or the mass media. It's just that it's so saturated with what's going on that it can generate a sense of hopelessness and overwhelm for me, because the problems are so widespread, so deep, and so ubiquitous everywhere that I just become like, back to that amygdala response, that fight, flight, or I just freeze. I was like, I'm so insignificant. I can't do anything. This is too big, right? So I just don't even tune into it. But obviously there's a lot going on in America with duality and polarity right now. With obviously we're a two-party system in this country. So it's very easy to get into the us versus them. I'm not going to make a meal out of this because...
And who's Chiron?
The USA chart.
Who is Chiron?
Oh, Chiron, the wounded healer. Yeah, it's the archetype of where we've been wounded. And if we choose to plumb the depths of that wound, if we choose to unpack where we got hurt, when we got hurt, why we got hurt, how we got hurt, and we go into that core wound, because all of us carry a core wound in life, right? There's this one issue, this one theme, this one archetype, this one skip in the record that just keeps getting, it's like ripping a scab. It's almost healed, and then you bump it and it rips the scab off again, and there it is again. All of us have one core issue in our life that really, it's like for Superman, it's kryptonite. Everyone has kryptonite in their chart, and that's where Chiron sits in the natal chart. So it's interesting because it's in the USA 4th house. This is the Sibley chart, cast for the 4th of July, 1776 at 5:10 p.m. in Philadelphia. okay?
Mm.
It's in the fourth house of the home.
Mm.
And it's the Chiron was in Aries on that day. And Aries is our identity. I am is the key phrase for Aries. So I am what?
That home country.
So we have,
That homeland.
although America is a Cancer country, we are born under the solar sun being in the sign of Cancer, which is hospitality. We're the melting pot for all these different cultures to come here, right? Even French people can come here.
Yeah.
So thanks to the French, Lafayette helped us in the American Revolution, yada, yada, yada. But what is our identity? Who is America? It's us. It's just us. It's all of us. Because we're all immigrants. And if you take that to its furthest extension, we're all aliens here because none of us get to stay here forever. We're just visiting this planet. This is not our permanent residence. This is like a school we're in, right? So it's interesting because of the racial tensions upon which this country was birthed with the African slave issue and with minority oppression and oppression of women. And it goes on and on and on. This Chiron wound about who are we in this country.
Yeah, because Aries would be that identity pushed to a nation, that nationality, and that need to be kind of almost like claiming one people for sure. And it can be about my people is the best because Aries is the best. So it can be that wound of identity. But what if we find out down the line, much later, that once we get all these identities and like there were distractions? What if we find out? I also want to bring up the good side of Aries, a great side of Aries, which is self-identity and love for the self-identity. So when we push it to nations, it can be dangerous because they can push one people to fight another and more for the sake of proving himself, which that goes in our bodies. That's that sense of identity that wants to survive. All our cells want to survive. They have a program to survive. We want to survive organically. And then it goes and it gets almost like a hologram. It gets spread through our world, through everything. So the nations, the peoples, nature, everything. And the good side of Aries is that self-love, is that deep self-love. Why? Because I am receiving that love. I am that love. So Aries says I am, and it's usually love, right? So like then you can attach whatever you want. I am. Like in Chinese, you say I, and then something else, and it's the adjective. You don't need a verb, but it's right there. Right there, Aries. Right there. What you have, what you see is what you get. There's no need for like something to carry that quality. That's it. Well, if we just do the love, or what I like to use, because love, it's a 4-letter word after all. It's charged. It needs clearing, like everything that has a lot of charge, including the news. So we talked about the news, same. That's external energy. Do we want to carry that around, or do we want to just be in the most authentic version of ourselves without the conditioning? I choose that one. And I use the word self-affinity, because when you're in affinity with something, it's compatible with you, you're compatible with it, or a person, and you resonate. Therefore, there's no rejection, right? So the wound, which in human design for you it's rejection, for me it's denial. So I deny. I deny that I have a problem.
It's interesting when we
I
got
deny
together.
that my hair is not done.
All my life, I have felt angry with myself, like I let myself down. I came in with this self-loathing, self-deprecation. I won't go into the details of the trauma, but it was a sense of I can't believe I couldn't save him. Survivor's guilt is the big one in my life, and this rejection, and this has happened to me over and over. Well, I'll reject myself before someone else can. If I sense that out of my own traumatic memory coming out of my unconscious mind that someone might reject me, before they get a chance to, I'll reject myself. Because Aries wants to take the power. Aries is authentic power. Aries is courage, bravery, the will to act. Before you even have a chance to calculate the risk, you just act, right?
Yeah.
I have an Aries rising, and in football, I was number 51. I played center on offense. So Aries initiates things. It's the first sign of spring. It's the green shoots breaking ground, right? It's the new beginnings, the clean slate, the fresh start, the impulse to be. I am. And so the play begins. Of course, the quarterback calls the cadence, but the center snaps the football to the quarterback. So it's interesting because I was with an Aries rising. I started every play when I snapped that football back to our quarterback. And so where am I going with this? That leap before you look. That she was mentioning a few minutes ago, the positives about it. Sometimes we just need to act. We can't keep calculating, analyzing, waiting to gathering data, doing research. There comes a time when we just have to do something. And that Nike swoosh, right? The just do it.
Yeah.
That's an Aries. That's very Aries.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, I'm just being literally flooded right now with hundreds of downloads about where all this could go, and I'm just like, I'm gonna cultivate some spaciousness for myself right now, and let Joelle take this somewhere.
Yeah.
Because I'm literally overwhelmed with this.
Yeah.
With my whole life process right now.
Yeah.
Titrating down off of
the pharmaceutical.
Off of medication and having to find that balance and we think we've got things underhand, we think we've healed things, we think we've got it in the bag, and then all of a sudden another onion layer gets pulled back and we realize, oh no, there's more.
Right.
So it's very humbling, at least in my own experience, this dealing with PTSD and survivor's guilt and overcoming alcohol and the journey of recovery now. I haven't had a drop in almost 18 years, and did the medicinal cannabis thing and still working with the medication thing. And you know what? My big message in this moment is do what works. Everyone's different. Everyone has unique needs. Everyone has a unique trigger point. Everyone has a unique history and unique path that has led them to this moment. But the more we can cultivate a toolkit of effective processes, practices, rituals, ceremonies, modalities, healing, therapies, counseling, gardening, working out, meditating, yoga, martial arts, whatever it is, do it. If it works, self-care is not selfishness. It's absolutely essential. I'm really working on this, man. That was a foreign concept to me.
Yeah, yeah.
Self-love, self-care was like, what?
Yeah, you rejected that term, self-love. You were like, no, this is not bhakti. Like,
Right.
we need to
Right.
love Krishna. We love Krishna. And this has been our discussion, which this was more like a fight at first, where I was like, well, but it's all
Good
in
point.
the spiritual text that we study. Ramdas talks about self-love, self-care. Well, I like self-care, right? You conceded to self-care. That was like
That was my starting point.
That was the
Self-love,
way in.
I'm not there yet, but I can start with self-care.
That's the way in. And I go a little further with the affinity part, where I have a friend who said, I became my best ally and my life changed. My best ally. See, when you choose to become your best ally or to have self-affinity, the things, the people that you meet, the decisions that you take, they're for your best interests, which ultimately cultivates that sense of identity, a sense of identity that comes from a true authenticity, not a prove-it energy, which is another part of Aries, which I have very, and that has become very dear, because when you become in affinity with yourself, you recognize not only the good things that come your way, and that, oh, that looks like me, like a nice sweater or like something,
Yeah,
right? Like it's this. It becomes taking all the parts of you and putting them together in a sense of, okay, this is like all collected, this is all okay, and a sense of acceptance. A true sense of acceptance, because you've recognized, you've identified each of these parts, and then they become a whole. And from that place, you can have more and more authenticity. So my part of denying these parts that I didn't want to look at, like the prove-it energy, or the delusional, right? Sometimes it serves a purpose, though. Certain of these things, they serve a purpose. That's why they cannot be just put aside or put under the rug, even though we're in a house where we love to clean, and we even have this little phrase of like, crumb police.
The crumb police.
We're like the police after the crumbs, all over the in the floor, everything. So yeah, that's how we get into tangents. And this is great, because this is part of the authenticity too.
Yeah.
Right? It's claiming what is real for us, and what is, like in my case was Aquarius in the first, what is unique, and what is unique to us, what is unique to you, like you claim it, because this is part of what wants to continue, what wants to perdure. So that joy, that wonderful, just like bubbly version of your personality, when it's real, is totally enjoyable, and you can become this person in itself that brings something to the whole. So it's not just in isolation, and it's definitely something that can also lead the way, because Aries is the first, is the leader. Not trying to be the leader, just being by being, right? So self-affinity, never do anything in anger, just come back and regroup and come from that state of neutrality after you like placed all the pieces together, and you come from a authenticity, so like everything can flow from there. And if you're sitting in the middle of the whirlpool or hurricane, tsunami,
breathe.
you've got this. You are. And you are enough.
I'm working on self-regulation techniques. There's so many. To self-regulate, to catch myself before I spool out.
Yeah.
Deep breathing, getting barefoot. You know, for 3 days, I was on my hands and knees pulling weeds in the backyard. Very therapeutic for me.
Yeah.
So good. I go on a run every morning. I chant a mantra every morning. I take magnesium. You know, there's so many things. Again, back to whatever works for you, do it. Mm-hmm. Just do it. Just do what works. And it's an ongoing process of refinement, of up-leveling, of tweaking, of adjusting, of trial and error, of learning. We have to investigate. We have to check out. We have to live through experience, man. It's hard. It's very challenging, but the rewards are endless, and it's worth it. So I'm always just wishing everyone only the very best. Always. And I'm working on myself, man.
J&J Realcast. Thank you.
Yeah. Take such good care of your precious selves.